The Eastern Conference is starting to take shape, and with training camps around the corner, it's time to stop speculating and start making some real calls. The Boston Celtics season opener is just days away, and fans are already feeling the buzz. October 22nd against the Sixers. Mark that down. But before we dive into what the Celtics will bring to the floor, let's zoom out and look at how the rest of the East is stacking up. Who's trending up? Who's sliding back? And where exactly could Boston realistically land? Let's kick things off with the Cleveland Cavaliers, currently sitting at a projected 55.5 wins. That's a big number, especially when you consider some of the setbacks they're already facing. Ty Jerome is out, Garland may not be ready for opening night, and Max Strus is nursing an injury. That means a lot of weight falls on Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley to carry the load early. DeAndre Hunter's impact is still a question mark, and while Sam Merrill re-signed, he's not going to be the guy that changes the direction of the season. Still, with the East looking a little softer overall, you could easily see Cleveland punching above their weight just by being more consistent than their rivals. The safe bet might be to take the over, but if they decide to pace themselves for the postseason and prioritize rest over regular season dominance, don't be surprised if they coast into the mid-50s and leave the top seed behind for others to chase. Then we got the Knicks at 52.5. This one's fascinating. New York's identity is clear. Pedal to the metal on offense. Not much concern for defense. Brunson's going to do his thing, but pairing him with Karl-Anthony Towns could be risky on the defensive end. Still, with OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges locking up on the wings, there's enough balance to believe they can make it work. What I'm keeping an eye on is whether Mitchell Robinson starts alongside KT, which would add a defensive anchor, or if they lean into their offense-heavy approach. Josh Hart off the bench could even make a run for Sixth Man of the Year. New York's ceiling is high, and given how durable they were last season, I'll take the over and say they're a top 3 team. Now here's where things get weird. Orlando. 51.5 wins for a team that's still finding its rhythm feels ambitious. Sure, Paolo Banchero looks like a star in the making. Franz Wagner keeps improving, and they've added smart pieces like Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones. Wendell Carter Jr. is solid, but can this core really put up 50-plus wins in a stacked East? That's a tall order. They got talent, but there's still chemistry to build, and they're probably a year away from being taken seriously in that top tier. I'm going under, not because I doubt their direction, but because this is a tough conference to navigate without playoff experience and a clear identity. Sliding over to Atlanta, we've got the Hawks projected at 46.5. I actually like this spot for them. They've made some solid moves. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Chris Porzingis, Luke Kennard, and dumped some pieces that weren't working. Charles Bassey is a sneaky good pickup. The Buff can trade clears some space for their guard rotation, and with Trae Young still running the show, there's enough firepower here to make a serious run. They've had a few false starts the last couple seasons, but this could be the year they finally find some cohesion. I'm taking the over. I think they're a playoff lock, and if the vibes are right, don't be shocked if they're in the top 5. Now let's talk about a team that might just shock everybody, the Detroit Pistons. 45.5 wins is no joke, but this team's been quietly putting together a really interesting roster. Jaden Ivey is back and healthy. Cade Cunningham has the keys, and they added Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson. Even without Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr., this team looks more versatile. Their depth might not jump off the page, but they've got playmakers and shooters, and that's enough to make a dent. If they stay healthy, I think they could be a sleeper team to finish as high as 3rd in the East. It sounds bold now, but when the games start rolling, I think people will see what's coming. Give me the over. Next up are the Bucks at 44.5. I'm going against the grain here. I'm taking the under. Yes, they've still got Giannis, and yes, he's coming in mad after that loss to Turkey in Eurobasket, but something feels off. The roster just isn't inspiring. Kyle Kuzma, Kevin Porter Jr., Miles Turner. Those are nice players, but are they enough to get Giannis back into contender territory? I'm not buying it. The team chemistry feels shaky, and I wouldn't be surprised if trade rumors start swirling by December. Milwaukee might be staring down a reset button before they even get to the All-Star break. And yeah, hot take incoming. The Celtics finish ahead of the Bucks this season. Book it. Speaking of the Celtics, Let's talk about this projected win total, 43.5. I'm leaning over, but it's tricky. A lot depends on how they start the season. If injuries hit early or they stumble out of the gate, there's a world where Brad Stevens starts looking toward the lottery. I'm not saying they'll tank, but if things go sideways, Boston has enough future-facing flexibility to pivot fast. On the other hand, if Pritchard comes out swinging, if Simons plays like a guy chasing a contract, if Jaylen Brown starts hearing MVP whispers, this team could take off. And don't sleep on Nemias Quetta either. If he breaks out, we might have to start talking about him in the most improved player conversation. I think Boston has more upside than they're getting credit for, and I'm not ready to write them off just because the roster isn't top-heavy like last year. I'll take the over, and I'll pencil them in as a 6 seed. Maybe even a 5 if things break right. The Sixers are also projected at 43.5. And I'll just say it, Philadelphia finishes ahead of the Bucks too. Yeah, I saw the skinny Joel Embiid photos. Yeah, it's the same story every offseason. This is the year. And every year, it ends in disappointment. But at some point, doesn't the coin flip land on heads? Doesn't Embiid finally stay healthy and drag this team somewhere meaningful? Maybe. Maybe not. But they've still got enough talent to hover in that 45 to 48 win range. And in a year where a few contenders are limping, that might be all it takes to finish top 4. From here, things start to taper off. The Pacers are down at 39.5, and I just don't see it. Halliburton's their engine, and if he's not on the floor, everything else sputters. Siakam is solid, and they've got some decent depth with Aaron Nesmith and others, but this isn't a team that scares anybody. They might keep things competitive early on, but I could see them easing into a soft tank by January. The ender feels right. Miami at 37.5 is another tough one to call. The vibes in South Beach aren't good. Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo can carry a team in stretches, but the rest of the roster feels like a patchwork of youth and misfires. Norman Powell is fine, Jaquez has upside, but it's just not clicking. They're dangling in trade rumors, looking for an identity, and I don't think they'll find it in time. Give me the under here, too. This doesn't feel like the Heat we've known the last few years. It feels like a transition year. Toronto, though, 35.5 wins might be low. In fact, I think they're being slept on. Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and Jacob Poeltl, that's a starting 5 that can compete with anyone on any night. No, they're not a contender, but they're gritty, young, and motivated. I wouldn't be surprised if they went close to 40 games just by outworking teams. The Raptors have something to prove, and I think they'll come out with a chip on their shoulder. Give me the over. Chicago at 32.5? Who even cares at this point? The Bulls are stuck in limbo, a team with no direction, no urgency, and nothing to build around. Zach LaVine trade rumors are already swirling, and the front office looks like it's asleep at the wheel. I'm not even going to waste energy predicting their season. Move on. Now that we've painted the landscape of the Eastern Conference and carved out a spot for the Celtics in that top 6 range, let's dig into the depth questions that are going to define Boston's early season, and potentially the team's ceiling. We've talked plenty about the stars, but the reality is this year may come down to who steps up off the bench and which role players claim minutes. And no conversation about that is complete without bringing up the X-Man himself, Xavier Tillman. Celtics fans didn't get a true look at what Tillman could do last season. Between injuries and inconsistent rotation minutes, his impact was mostly muted. He logged only 33 games in green, averaging just 1 point and 7 minutes per contest. That version of Xavier Tillman doesn't tell the full story. When healthy and confident, especially back in Memphis, Tillman showed flashes of being a tough, smart, and physical presence on the court. He wasn't lighting up the scoreboard, but he did all the little things, switchable defense, rebounding, hustle plays, the type of stuff that keeps you on the floor when games start to tighten up. During the 22-23 season with Memphis, he was playing nearly 20 minutes a game, giving you 7 points and 5 boards with a level of energy and toughness that any playoff team would love to have coming off the bench. Those numbers aren't eye-popping, but they're steady. They tell you he can survive in an NBA rotation, especially when given a defined role. This season, he might actually get that chance. We spent a lot of time hyping up Nemias Quetta as the backup big, and rightfully so. The upside with Quetta is real. But don't be shocked if it's Tillman who carves out a consistent role early in the year. His defensive versatility might be more valuable in the regular season grind. Unlike Quetta or Garza, Tillman doesn't need the ball to make an impact. He understands spacing, can defend multiple positions, and brings a level of maturity that this second unit is going to need while rotations settle in. And that's not a knock on Luka Garza either. Garza's offensive game speaks for itself. He can stretch the floor, hit open jumpers, and give you some scoring off the bench. But defensively, there are still question marks. He's not going to switch out on guards or provide any rim deterrence. That might limit his usefulness against some of the faster, smaller teams in the East. Garza has a role to play, and maybe there will be stretches where his offense is needed. But if Joe Mazzulla wants a stabilizer in the front court, someone who can hold the line while the stars rest, Xavier Tillman might be the more reliable option, at least to start the year. That brings us to the million-dollar question. How does Joe Mazzulla plan to manage this rotation with so many new faces and such a drastically different roster compared to last year? The Celtics no longer have bigs like Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis spacing the floor and knocking down threes. That changes the spacing dynamics completely. Guys like Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard can still shoot the lights out, and Derek White and Jaylen Brown can knock down open looks, but without stretch fives pulling defenses out of the paint, the lane could start looking a little more crowded. So it becomes about how Mazzulla adjusts. Does he play smaller lineups more often? Does he trust guys like Tillman and Quetta to hold down the middle without compromising the offense? Spacing is going to be a problem early, especially if the second unit can't generate consistent outside shooting. And while we know Hauser is a sniper, the debate about whether or not he should start is still very much alive. Some fans are all in on giving him more minutes with the starters, while others think he's best suited as an energy guy off the bench, where he can feast on weaker matchups. Personally, keeping him in that six-man role makes the most sense. Let him come in, fire away, and give the offense a jolt when needed. Starting him could expose his defensive limitations and disrupt the balance of the first unit. The bigger concern is what happens if there's an early injury. That's when you start testing the depth chart. That's when guys like Garza, Quetta, Tillman, and even some of the two-way guys might get their moment. These first 2 months of the season are going to be a live audition for who sticks in the rotation, who earns trust, and who fades into the background. That's the challenge and the opportunity for everyone not named Tatum or Brown. And while we're here, let's talk about the Golden State Warriors for a second, because somehow their dysfunction is still relevant to Boston. The Klay Thompson fallout, Jonathan Kuminga's uncertain future, the front office being in complete disarray. All of it circles back to the fact that the Celtics have been rumored to have some interest in a few of their pieces, or at least in keeping tabs on their decision-making. Especially now, with Al Horford's future pretty much decided. He's not coming back. It makes you appreciate the way Boston has handled its own internal business. While the Warriors are fumbling trade talks, missing out on deals like Malik Monk and Alex Caruso, and losing leverage with every passing day, Brad Stevens continues to keep the Celtics on course. He doesn't rush. He doesn't overreact. He evaluates, waits for the right moment, and then strikes. That's exactly what this team needs heading into a transitional year. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Melbourne is buzzing with whispers that could shake the NBA landscape. Rumors are swirling that Josh Giddey, the Australian prodigy who has dazzled fans with his court vision and versatility, might be making a surprising leap to the Boston Celtics. Sources close to the situation suggest that discussions have been underway behind the scenes, fueling speculation about one of the most intriguing moves this offseason. Giddey, 21, has been a revelation since entering the league, blending an uncanny ability to distribute the ball with sharp decision-making and a developing scoring touch. His rise in Melbourne and subsequent impact in the NBA made him a coveted asset, and now whispers of him donning the iconic green and white jersey of the Celtics have fans and pundits alike holding their breath. Imagine a roster featuring Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, suddenly infused with the youthful energy and playmaking of an international sensation. The mere thought has already sparked heated debates on social media and sports forums worldwide. While nothing is confirmed, insiders hint that Boston's front office has been quietly exploring options to add a dynamic guard capable of orchestrating the offense and providing consistent all-around production. GIDDEY's skill set matches that profile perfectly. If the deal goes through, it could redefine the Celtics' approach, potentially creating a new core that balances experience with youthful exuberance. Australian fans, in particular, are said to be holding out hope, torn between pride in a local hero's NBA success and the bittersweet prospect of losing him from Melbourne's growing basketball scene. Of course, the NBA rumor mill is notorious for exaggeration, and some caution that this could be another tantalizing story that never materializes. Yet, the timing and the subtle hints coming from various corners of the league have kept the chatter alive. Could Josh Giddey really be Boston-bound? If so, the Celtics might just be engineering one of the most talked-about moves of the year, one that could reverberate far beyond the parquet floors of TD Garden. For now, fans can only speculate, but the buzz is real. Melbourne's own might be donning green sooner than anyone expected. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.